My name is Rachel Miller. I'm 24, and I live just outside Austin, Texas. I work long hours as a junior architect, but beneath the rolled-up blueprints and coffee stains, there's something that defines me more than my job. I was always too patient. Patient with my family's dismissals. Patient with their constant comparisons. Patient until patience turned into chains. My dad handed my sister the keys to a brand new Tesla while calling me a failure who'd never amount to anything. He had no idea that in just a few years I'd hold the deed to a mansion that would silence him forever. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. It helps me more than you know. And tell me in the comments, has your family ever favored one sibling over you? I'd love to hear where you're watching from and how you handled it. It happened at my sister Olivia's 21st birthday. The backyard was strung with fairy lights, tables piled with food, neighbors and relatives clinking glasses like we were royalty. Olivia wore a silver dress that shimmered every time she twirled for attention. I stood off to the side, nursing a soda, already used to being background noise in my own family. When Dad called for everyone's attention, the crowd hushed. He smiled proudly at Olivia, holding a set of sleek black keys in his hand. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying with pride, "you deserve this. You've always made us proud. Happy birthday." The Tesla parked in the driveway gleamed under the lights. The crowd gasped, clapping, cheering. Olivia shrieked, hugging him like she'd just won the lottery. And then, as if the moment wasn't humiliating enough, Dad turned toward me. He smirked, voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Maybe if you'd done something with your life, Rachel, you'd have earned something too. But architecture? That's just drawing on paper, not success." Laughter rippled through the guests. Not cruel, not malicious, but pitying. My chest tightened. My ears rang. I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat, praying no one saw the way my hands shook around my soda can. No one defended me. Not my mother, who just sipped her wine and looked away. Not Olivia, who basked in the attention, her arm looped around Dad's shoulders. And me? I stood there nodding, pretending it didn't hurt. Pretending I was made of stone. But inside, I was crumbling. That night, when the lights dimmed and the guests left, I drove home in my beat-up Corolla. The same car I'd been driving since high school. Every creak of the engine felt like an echo of Dad's words. Failure. The word looped in my head, sharper than any blade. By the time I pulled into my tiny apartment complex, tears blurred the headlights. I sat there in the dark, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. I whispered to myself, voice trembling, "One day, I'll prove him wrong." I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But that night, as the Tesla keys jingled in Olivia's hands in my memory, something inside me shifted. My patience, the trait that had kept me swallowing every insult, every dismissal, cracked. And in its place, a spark lit. A spark that would one day grow into fire. Because what my father didn't realize was this. You can only call someone a failure so many times before they stop listening. And when I stopped listening, I started building, not just blueprints on paper, but the foundation of a life that would leave him speechless. People always said the Millers looked like the perfect family. A polished suburban clan with a 2-story house, shiny cars in the driveway, and Sunday brunch pictures plastered all over social media. But perfection is a costume. And behind ours, there were cracks no photo could hide. My sister Olivia was born 3 years after me, but it felt like she arrived with a crown on her head. From the time she was little, she was the star. She danced ballet, won pageants, and joined cheerleading. Every recital, every trophy, every ribbon, Dad posted them online with captions like, "My pride and joy," when I brought home an A+ on my math test. He barely looked up from his phone. Mom always said, "Rachel, don't be jealous. Olivia just shines differently." But it wasn't shining. It was favoritism. Pure and simple. Every family dinner had the same script. Dad asked Olivia about her day, her classes, and her friends. He beamed when she spoke. Then he'd glance at me and ask one question, flat and perfunctory. "Still doing that architecture thing?" When I nodded, he'd chuckle. "So more doodles then?" I'd force a smile while Olivia giggled into her glass of water. At the table, I wasn't a daughter. I was background noise. Birthdays were the worst. For Olivia, the parties were extravagant. Balloons, cakes shaped like crowns, expensive gifts she'd flaunt in front of friends. For me? A store-bought cake, a gift card, and maybe 20 minutes of attention before the conversation turned back to Olivia's next big achievement. One year, when I turned 18, I got a sweater. Olivia, who was 15 at the time, got her first car, and the sweater wasn't even my size. My mother wasn't cruel like Dad, but she was complicit. She never defended me. She never spoke up when Dad's words cut deep. Once, after a particularly painful dinner where Dad mocked me for wasting time at college, I asked her softly, "Why don't you ever say anything?" She sighed, setting down her wine glass. "Rachel, you know how your father is. It's easier not to fight him. Easier for her, maybe. But for me, it was suffocating." Olivia didn't just bask in the attention. She weaponized it. She'd flaunt her new clothes, her trips, her gifts, making sure I saw what I didn't have. Once, when Dad bought her diamond earrings for Christmas, she turned to me with a smirk and said, "Maybe if you actually impressed him, you'd get something nice too." Her words stung more than the cold silence of the rest of the family. To outsiders, we were the Miller family, successful, loving, close-knit. But behind closed doors, it was a monarchy. Olivia was the princess. Dad was the king. Mom was the silent queen. And me? I was the servant, expected to clap for everyone else's achievements while shrinking myself smaller and smaller. But cracks have a way of widening. In my last year of college, I started noticing something odd. Whenever Olivia got a new gift, like her diamond bracelet or her designer handbag, Dad would make a joke at my expense right after. It was like my humiliation was part of the ritual. When she got her bracelet, he smirked at me and said, "Rachel, maybe one day you'll design something worth wearing." When she got her handbag, he added, "Don't worry, maybe your doodles will sell for pocket change someday." It wasn't just favoritism. It was a performance. He didn't just want to lift Olivia. He wanted to tear me down. And the Tesla? That was the pinnacle of the performance. The gleaming proof that I was nothing compared to her. But what he didn't realize was this. Rituals can backfire, because every insult, every slight, every cruel joke, they weren't breaking me anymore. They were building something stronger, something dangerous, and one day that danger would come crashing down in the form of mansion keys. It's funny how betrayal rarely comes like lightning. It doesn't explode all at once. It drips slowly like water carving stone. That's how it was in my family. Every sarcastic remark, every cruel laugh, every dismissal that told me, over and over, I didn't belong. The first real fracture happened at my college graduation. I'd worked for years, pulling all-nighters in the studio, balancing 2 part-time jobs, barely scraping together tuition. I was proud when I walked across that stage, degree in hand. After the ceremony, families gathered to take pictures. Friends of mine posed with flowers and balloons, their parents crying happy tears. And me? My mom gave me a quick hug. Dad shook my hand like I was a business acquaintance. Olivia rolled her eyes. "Congrats," she said flatly. "So, when are you actually going to start making money?" I swallowed hard. This degree is the first step. "I already have an internship lined up," Dad snorted. "Internship? That's just code for free labor. Don't expect me to bankroll you if you can't get a real job." My smile froze. I didn't ask for his money. I never had. But that didn't stop the sting. At dinner, Olivia hogged the spotlight, bragging about her plans to study abroad in Italy. Dad beamed, raising a glass to her future. When the waiter brought out dessert, Dad clinked his spoon on his glass. "To Olivia," he toasted. "The daughter who makes us proud," the words slammed into me. I was sitting right there, cap and gown draped over the chair beside me, diploma tucked in my bag. But to him, I was invisible. Months later, when I finally moved into my first real apartment near downtown Austin, I invited my family to see it. It wasn't fancy, just a small one-bedroom with mismatched furniture from thrift shops. But to me, it was freedom. They walked in, and within seconds, Olivia laughed. "Oh my God, this looks like a college dorm." Dad smirked. "Don't get too comfortable, Rachel. Places like this are stepping stones. If you're lucky," I forced a smile. "It's mine. That's what matters." But inside, I felt like a child showing a crayon drawing to parents who only valued oil paintings. One evening, I came over for Sunday dinner. Olivia had just gotten a new credit card, and she was bragging about Dad paying it off for her every month. I finally snapped. "Why is it always her? I worked 2 jobs to put myself through school." "I don't get a dime." Dad set down his fork, voice sharp. "Because Olivia is an investment. You're a gamble, and not one that pays off." My stomach twisted. "So no matter what I do, it won't be enough?" He leaned back, smug. "Exactly." The room went silent. Mom stared at her plate. Olivia smirked like she'd won some unspoken competition. The Tesla party was just the crown jewel in a long line of humiliations. But what I noticed that night, what I couldn't ignore, was the way Dad looked at me when he gave Olivia those keys. It wasn't just indifference. It wasn't just favoritism, it was cruel, deliberate, meant to cut. I realized then that he didn't just see me as a failure, he wanted me to believe it too. Later that night, after everyone left, I slipped back into the kitchen to grab my bag. That's when I saw it, a stack of letters on the counter. One had my name on it. A thick envelope. My heart stopped. Before I could pick it up, Olivia snatched it. "This isn't yours." Her smirk faltered for just a second, like she'd been caught. I frowned. "Why does it have my name then?" She shoved it behind her back. "It's nothing. Just junk mail." Her tone was too sharp, too defensive. I stared at her, suspicion twisting in my gut. But before I could press, Dad walked in. "Ready to go, Olivia?" She bolted past me, the envelope still hidden in her hand. I stood frozen in that kitchen. The image burned into my mind. My sister, clutching something meant for me, her face tight with guilt. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about insults anymore. Something bigger was being kept from me. And when I found out what it was, nothing in my family would ever be the same again. That envelope Olivia snatched haunted me. For days, I couldn't shake the image of her guilty face, her trembling hands as she stuffed it behind her back. Something told me it wasn't junk mail. Something told me it was mine. And I was right. A week later, while visiting my parents' house, I noticed Olivia's backpack was left carelessly unzipped on the couch. Peeking out from the side pocket was that same thick envelope, my name still printed clearly on the front. My pulse hammered. I looked around. The house was silent. Mom was upstairs and Dad was in the garage. Hands shaking, I slid it out. It wasn't junk. It was a job offer from one of the biggest architectural firms in Texas. A firm I had applied to months earlier. One I thought had rejected me. The letter congratulated me. They were impressed with my portfolio. And they wanted to bring me on as a junior designer, with full benefits and a starting salary higher than anything I'd dared to hope for. I stared at the words, my vision swimming. Then rage took over. When Olivia walked in, I was waiting. I held the letter in my hands, my voice trembling with fury. "You stole this from me," she froze. For once, the smirk wasn't there. "Rachel, she started. I cut her off. "Why? Why would you do this?" Her eyes darted, searching for a lie. Finally, she whispered, "Because if you got this job, Dad might actually see you as equal to me. And I can't let that happen." Her words sliced deeper than any insult Dad had ever thrown at me. Before I could respond, Dad stormed into the room, his face red with anger. "What's going on here?" I thrust the letter toward him. "She stole my job offer." This was my chance, and she hid it from me. Dad snatched the paper, scanned it, then laughed. a low, cruel sound. "Rachel," he said, shaking his head, "do you really think a firm like this would want you? They probably sent this by mistake." "Olivia was right not to get your hopes up," I gaped at him. "It has my name on it. My portfolio. They wanted me." But he was already tearing the letter in half, then in quarters, then into tiny pieces that fluttered to the floor like ashes. My body went cold. As if that weren't enough, Dad called for Mom. When she appeared at the doorway, wine glass in hand, he announced loudly, "Our Rachel still thinks she's going to be successful. Can you believe it?" Olivia laughed, brushing past me to wrap her arm around him. "She's delusional." "Dad, always has been." Mom just sighed, sipping her drink, saying nothing. I stood there, fists clenched, tears burning my eyes as my entire family mocked me again. But this time, it wasn't over an apartment or a sweater or a car. This was my future, my dream, and they'd crushed it. That night, I drove back to my apartment in silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. When I got home, I didn't even turn on the lights. I sank onto the couch, staring into the dark, every insult, every dismissal, every cruel laugh replayed in my head like a film I couldn't stop. "You're a gamble. You're delusional. You're not successful." The words piled up until I couldn't breathe, and for the first time, I wondered if they were right. But somewhere beneath the suffocating weight of their cruelty, something stirred. A voice. Faint but steady. They don't get to decide who you are. I didn't believe it yet. Not fully. But that whisper grew louder every time I thought about the shredded pieces of my job offer on the floor of my father's living room, and I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was war. Because if my family thought they could steal my future and laugh in my face, they didn't know me at all. I wouldn't stay broken. I was going to rebuild. And one day, I'd make them choke on their own words. After the shredded letter, I felt like my entire world had caved in. I barely remember the drive back to my apartment. The city lights blurred like smudged paint. My Corolla rattled beneath me, every sound amplifying the silence in my chest. When I finally stumbled through the door, I dropped my bag on the floor and collapsed onto the couch. I didn't move for hours. There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's suffocating. The silence of being ignored. The silence of being mocked until you start mocking yourself. The silence of believing you don't matter. I sat there staring at the ceiling, the taste of salt on my lips from tears I hadn't realized were falling. Was I delusional? Was I wasting my time? My father's words looped in my head. "You're a gamble, and not one that pays off." The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. My alarm buzzed, my phone lit up with notifications, but I stayed under the blanket, hollow and numb. I skipped work, then the next day. My internship called, left voicemails, then stopped altogether. The world kept moving, but I was frozen. One evening, my best friend Jasmine knocked on my door. When I didn't answer, she let herself in with the spare key I'd given her. Her gasp filled the room. "Rachel. Oh my God. What happened to you?" I sat there in pajamas, surrounded by empty takeout boxes, eyes swollen from crying. "I'm a failure," I whispered, my voice shaking. "My dad was right. Olivia was right. Everyone's right." She knelt in front of me, grabbing my hands. "Don't you dare say that. Rachel, you're the hardest worker I know. You're brilliant. You built models in college that had professors stunned. You don't need them to believe in you." I shook my head, tears spilling. But they ruined everything. That job was my chance, and now it's gone. Her grip tightened. "Then make another chance. Don't let them win. Don't let them decide your life." Her words cracked something inside me. Not fully, but enough for light to slip through. That night, lying awake in the dark, I replayed what Jasmine said. "Don't let them win." It echoed. Against the years of silence, the years of being called less than. And for the first time I realized, I had a choice. I could stay here, broken, proving them right. Or I could get up, prove them wrong, and build a life so undeniable they couldn't tear it apart. I wiped my eyes, sat up, and whispered to myself, "Steady this time. I won't stay broken." The next morning, I forced myself out of bed. I showered, cleaned my apartment, and threw away the boxes. It wasn't much, but it was the first step. Then I sat at my desk, pulled out my sketchbook, and started drawing again. Floor plans, facades, cityscapes. My hand trembled at first, but the lines grew stronger, sharper. Every stroke whispered a promise. I'm not done. Weeks passed. I applied to new firms. Most ignored me. A few sent rejection emails. But I kept applying, kept sketching, kept building my portfolio. Every no fueled me, because underneath it all, the humiliation still burned. The Tesla, the torn letter, my father's laughter. And I knew one day I'd turn that fire outward. Because the Millers thought they'd broken me. But they hadn't realized that humiliation is a dangerous seed. And mine? It was about to grow into revenge. The funny thing about architects, we don't just build, we plan. Every line, every angle, every detail. And after hitting rock bottom, I realized something. I could plan my life the same way. If my family wanted me broken, I'd design a future strong enough to crush their expectations. I started small. I picked up freelance work designing floor plans for local contractors who couldn't afford big firms. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. At night, I polished my portfolio, adding bold projects, intricate models, visionary designs that showed the depth of what I could do. Then I uploaded it online, and slowly, quietly, messages started coming in. Small jobs at first, then bigger ones. It wasn't the firm I'd lost, but it was momentum. Through it all, Jasmine was my anchor. She'd sit across from me at coffee, shops, editing my applications, hyping me up when my confidence wavered. One night, she leaned over my laptop. "Rachel, look at this. They want you to design an entire residential block. Do you get what this means? People believe in your vision." I smiled faintly. For once, it feels like I'm building something real. But deep down, I wasn't just building for clients. I was building for myself. And if I was honest, I was building to prove my family wrong. One Saturday, while going through old boxes in my apartment, I stumbled across something I'd nearly forgotten. Copies of my college recommendation letters, written by professors who believed in me. Their words leapt off the page. "Rachel Miller is one of the most promising students I've ever taught." I clutched those letters to my chest. Proof. Evidence that I wasn't the failure my father painted me to be. And an idea began to form. The shredded job offer still haunted me. But when I emailed the firm, pretending to follow up on a previous letter, they shocked me. "Yes, Ms. Miller," the HR rep replied. "We extended you an offer months ago, but we never received a response." The position has since been filled. My chest tightened, but then, relief. Proof. They had wanted me. I wasn't crazy. Olivia and Dad had stolen it, and now I had the email chain to prove it. I printed the emails. I tucked away the recommendation letters. Piece by piece, I gathered every scrap of evidence that showed who I really was, and who they had tried to bury. But revenge isn't just about proof, it's about timing. I wasn't ready yet. Not until I had something bigger, something undeniable. That's when I met Michael, a senior architect who stumbled across my work online. He reached out with a simple message. "Your designs are bold. Let's talk." Over coffee, he studied my sketches, nodding slowly. "Rachel, you have vision. If you want, I can connect you with investors looking for young talent. You could launch your own firm." My breath caught. "My own firm?" He smiled. "Why work for people who don't see your worth when you could build something they can't ignore?" His words lit a fuse in me. For weeks, I worked relentlessly. By day, I freelanced. By night, I drafted plans, not just architectural designs, but business strategies. With Michael's help and Jasmine's support, I pitched my ideas to investors, and slowly, the funding came. Enough to open a small firm under my name, Rachel Miller, Architect. I traced the letters on the letterhead the night the printer spat out the first batch. My name, my future, mine. And as I stared at it, I knew exactly how I'd use it. Because if my family thought they could shred my future and laugh, they were about to learn something. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was designing a reckoning. And the first blueprint of that reckoning was already in motion. The first time I saw my father's smug expression falter, it was almost surreal. Like watching a crack form in a wall I thought would never break. And I'll admit, it felt good. Months after launching my small firm, I landed a contract designing a boutique hotel renovation. It wasn't huge, but it was high profile enough to make the local papers. The morning the article came out, Jasmine texted me, "Rachel, pick up today's Austin Chronicle. Now." There it was, my face, my firm's name, my designs plastered across the business section. When Dad saw it, I know how he reacted. Because that same evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. "Rachel," she said cautiously, "your father saw the paper. He wants you to come to dinner this Sunday." I laughed bitterly. "Why? So he can mock me again?" "No," she whispered, "because he's starting to realize he underestimated you." I went. Not for him, but for me, to see the cracks forming. At the table, Olivia twirled her diamond bracelet and rolled her eyes. "So what? You drew a few pictures and some newspaper wanted to fill space?" I sipped my water calmly. "No, Olivia. I signed a contract worth more than the Tesla Dad bought you." The silence was delicious. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. His smirk faltered just for a second. But then he forced a laugh. "One contract doesn't make you successful." "Don't get cocky." I leaned back, meeting his eyes. "It's a start. And starts to grow." For once, I wasn't trembling. The more I worked, the more Olivia seethed. One afternoon, I bumped into her at the mall. She was surrounded by friends, bragging loudly about her European shopping spree. When she saw me, she smirked. "Oh, look, it's the starving artist. Still taking the bus?" Her friends laughed. My cheeks heated, but instead of snapping back, I smiled slowly. "No, I drove here. My firm just upgraded my ride." I tossed her a wink and walked away, leaving her fuming. Later, I heard from Jasmine that Olivia had spent the rest of the day bad-mouthing me, desperate to keep her friends from realizing she was losing her crown. Then came the gala. Michael invited me to a charity event where Austin's wealthiest gathered. I almost said no. Memories of my family's dismissals still clung to me, but Jasmine insisted. "You belong there, Rachel." More than any of them, so I went. In a sleek black dress, heels clicking against marble floors, I walked into that ballroom with my head high, and when I introduced myself as the founder of Rachel Miller Architects, people listened. They shook my hand. They asked for my card. I wasn't background noise anymore. The very next day, Dad called me for the first time in months. "Rachel," he said, his tone strained. I saw photos from the gala. "Looks like you're making connections?" I smirked into the phone. "Yes, I am," he cleared his throat. "Well, don't forget where you came from." I let the silence drag before answering softly. "Don't worry, Dad. I never forget." And I meant it. Every slight, every insult, they were carved into me. But instead of breaking me, they were fueling me. With every new project, my confidence grew. And with every success, my father's control slipped. But I wasn't satisfied with the small cracks. I wanted the entire foundation of his cruel kingdom to collapse, so I started planning the next phase. Through Michael, I learned of an upcoming development deal, a massive project that my father's company was desperate to be part of. The twist? The board wanted a fresh architectural firm to lead the design, and my firm was on the short list. The moment I read that email, my heart pounded. If I played this right, my father wouldn't just see me succeed, he'd have to depend on me. Because soon the man who called me a failure, who gave Olivia a Tesla while mocking my Corolla, would be forced to sit across a table from me. And when he did, he wouldn't be laughing anymore. The day the board meeting arrived, I woke up with my heart pounding. This wasn't just another pitch. This was the pitch. The development deal was one of the largest in the city, hundreds of millions in contracts, a new mixed-use complex that would redefine downtown Austin. Every major company wanted in, including my father's, and leading the design firm? That would be decided today. I wore a navy suit, sharp lines echoing the strength I'd fought so hard to build. Jasmine texted me right before, "You've got this. Remember why you're doing it." As I walked into the glass-paneled conference room, every pair of eyes turned to me. Investors, executives. And then, sitting near the head of the table, was my father. He froze. For a moment, the smugness drained from his face. His jaw tightened. His eyes widened ever so slightly, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "Rachel?" he muttered, barely audible. I smiled politely. "Mr. Miller," the title was deliberate. I wasn't his daughter in this room. I was his competition. The board chair gestured to me. "Ms. Miller, please begin." I clicked the remote, and the screen lit up with renderings of sleek buildings, open courtyards, and eco-friendly designs that balanced ambition with community. As I spoke, my voice steady and confident, I saw the board members nodding, leaning forward. Intrigued, I caught my father shifting in his seat, whispering furiously to one of his colleagues. But for once, no one was laughing at me. They were listening. When I finished, the room broke into murmurs. The chair cleared its throat. "Impressive, Ms. Miller. We'll deliberate." And then, almost as an afterthought, he turned to my father's company rep. "Do you have anything to add?" Dad stood, fumbling with his notes. He stumbled through a stale presentation, showing outdated designs, corporate jargon that felt empty after what I'd just presented. When he finished, the silence was deafening. Finally, the chair spoke. "Thank you, Mr. Miller, but I think it's clear. The vision we need belongs to Rachel Miller Architects." Applause filled the room. I stood tall, shaking hands, exchanging cards, smiling with genuine pride. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father slump back into his chair, deflated, furious, powerless. After the meeting, as people filed out, he cornered me in the hallway. His voice was low, sharp. "How dare you embarrass me like that?" I raised an eyebrow. "Embarrass you? I didn't shred your future." "You did that to me." He flinched. "You're still my daughter," he spat, trying to reclaim some authority. I leaned in, my voice steady. "No, in that room I was your superior. And you know it." His face turned red, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to fire back but had no words. And for the first time in my life, I turned my back on him without fear. Of course, Olivia found out. That evening, my phone buzzed with her message. "Congrats on impressing a bunch of old men, but don't think this makes you better than me." I didn't reply, because deep down I knew the truth was eating her alive. For once, I was the headline. She wasn't. Weeks later, after contracts were signed and construction was underway, I stood in front of something I never thought I'd own. My first property, a sprawling mansion outside the city. Modern, glass walls, open floor plans I'd designed myself. The realtor handed me the keys. Heavy, gleaming, solid. I clutched them, remembering the Tesla keys flashing in Dad's hand at Olivia's birthday. This was bigger. This was mine. Because soon, those keys wouldn't just open a door. They would close a chapter. And when my family saw what I had built, their silence would be louder than any insult they had ever thrown at me. You'd think winning would feel like fireworks. Explosions of joy. A parade in your honor. But the truth? It's quieter. Sharper. Like standing in a room where everyone who once shouted over you suddenly can't find their voice. That's what the aftermath felt like. Word spread fast. The local paper ran a headline: Young architect Rachel Miller lands landmark project. Business journals picked it up. Social media buzzed with renderings of my designs. And my father? His phone calls stopped. For weeks, there was nothing. No mocking texts. No dismissive comments. Just silence. Mom called once, her voice low. "Rachel, your father. He's been in a mood. He doesn't know how to face you." I almost laughed. The man who had spent my entire life tearing me down couldn't stand to look me in the eye now that I'd proven him wrong. Olivia didn't take the silence well. She showed up at my firm unannounced one afternoon, strutting in like she owned the place. My staff exchanged nervous glances, but I stepped out of my office to meet her. She crossed her arms. "So this is it? Your little kingdom?" I smiled faintly. "It's bigger than the princess castle Dad built for you." Her cheeks flushed. "Don't get cocky, Rachel. Dad still says—" I cut her off. "Dad's opinion doesn't pay my bills. My contracts do. And unlike that Tesla, I earned this." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just glared, spun on her heel, and stormed out. A week later, Mom came to see me. She sat stiffly in my office, eyes flicking over the framed contracts and awards on my wall. "Rachel," she said softly, "I'm proud of you." The words should have warmed me, but instead, they felt hollow. "Now, after all these years of silence?" She flinched. I didn't know how to stand up to him. I leaned back, my voice calm but cold. "You didn't have to stand up to him. You just had to stand up for me. And you never did." Her eyes filled with tears. But I didn't comfort her, because for once, the weight wasn't mine to carry. The day I moved into my mansion, I invited them all. Not out of forgiveness, not out of love, but because I wanted them to see it. Dad arrived first, Olivia trailing behind him. Mom hovered by the doorway. When the realtor placed the keys in my hand, I turned slowly, letting the light catch on the gleaming metal. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is mine. Built by me, paid for by me. No handouts, no favors, just me." Dad's face went pale. His jaw clenched. For once, he had no words. Olivia scoffed, but her voice trembled. "It's just a house," I smiled. "No, it's proof." As they walked through the mansion, their silence was louder than any insult they'd ever hurled. Olivia's heels clicked angrily against the marble floors. Mom whispered to herself, "I never imagined." And Dad? He trailed behind, staring at the high ceilings, the sweeping staircase, and the view of the city skyline. Every step, every glance, I could see it sinking in. The truth he'd tried so hard to bury. I wasn't the failure. I was the success story. That night, after they left, I stood alone in the empty mansion. The silence was different now. Not suffocating. Not cruel, it was mine. And for the first time, I realized something. Revenge wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. But closure? Closure was still waiting, because there was one last thing I needed to say. And the next time I saw my father in public, he'd have no choice but to hear it. The last time I saw my father, it wasn't in his living room or at a family dinner. It was in court, not for me. For him, his company had gotten into a contract dispute, and as fate would have it, my firm was one of the expert witnesses called to testify about industry standards. I didn't seek it out, but when the summons came, I knew this was my final moment. When I walked in, the air was heavy with tension. My heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing louder than they should have. And there he was, sitting at the defense table. My father. The man who once handed Olivia Tesla keys while mocking my Corolla. When his eyes met mine, they flickered with something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not smugness, fear. The judge called me forward. "Ms. Miller, please state your occupation for the record." I lifted my chin. "Rachel Miller, CEO and founder of Rachel Miller Architects." The words rang out in the quiet courtroom, strong and clear. For a moment, no one breathed. And then I glanced at my father. His face drained of color. His mouth twitched, but no words came. The questions were straightforward, technical clarifications, industry practices. I answered each with calm authority, my voice steady. But beneath every word, an unspoken truth hung heavy. I wasn't the failure. I never was. The same man who mocked my drawings as doodles now had to sit in silence while a judge addressed me with respect he'd never given. And I realized then, this was bigger than revenge. This was justice. When the session ended, I walked out into the bright Texas sun. My father trailed behind me, but for once he didn't try to confront me. He just stood there, watching, his shoulders slumped, his mouth tight. I turned, meeting his gaze one final time. "You called me a failure," I said softly. "But the truth is, you failed me, and I'll never let you do it again." His eyes glistened, but I didn't wait for a reply. I turned and walked away. That evening, back at my mansion, I stood by the window holding the keys. The city stretched out below me, alive with lights. I thought about the Tesla keys, the shredded letter, the years of silence at family dinners. And then I thought about this. My home, my firm, my life. The keys jingled softly in my hand, and for the first time I smiled without bitterness, because these weren't just house keys. They were proof that patience had turned into strength. That humiliation had turned into fire. That failure had turned into triumph. I used to think I needed my family's approval to be whole. But the truth? I was whole all along. They just couldn't see it. And maybe they never will. But that's the thing about building a life. If you design it strong enough, it doesn't matter who believes in you. It stands anyway. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It means more than you know. Tell me in the comments, would you forgive a family who treated you like this, or would you walk away forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts.